Hello, and welcome back to Mary Elizabeth Jones' Variety Hour.
Here we go again.
Yes.
Here we go again.
Yep.
Wayne's World.
Party time. Excellent. Woo, 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 woo.
No way. Yes way. All right. Actually, in its own way, the show's not that we do anything like Wayne's World, but they kind of popularized doing that type of show that now everyone does.
Yeah.
Now we do. So it's all there's our homage to Wayne's World
Yeah.
on Halloween.
Yeah.
On Halloween, yes. So the yeah, I just love Saturday Night Live. I watch it. I've been There's a new movie about Saturday Night Live, and I've seen, and I watched that first episode of Saturday Night Live with George Carlin on it. So, and I saw the movie,
Yeah.
and I remember seeing the show, and it wasn't like the show it is now. It was mainly, I think, a music show with some comedy thrown in, but then it became more of a comedy show with some music thrown in. They had like two guests each singing two songs each. So there's a lot of, and then George Carlin wasn't in any of the skits. He was just telling jokes, his routine. So anyway, I see this movie, and I remember right at the Chevy Chase part where they tell it where does the fake news weekend update,
Oh, yeah.
and I remember losing interest in it after that and going to bed. It was like 12:15 at this point. I didn't feel like staying. I'm just a teenager, really. Not even in high school. I think I'm in middle school then. So then I think a few weeks later, the host was Desi Arnaz from I Love Lucy,
Oh, yeah.
the Lucy's husband, and uh, and I hadn't seen him in years. I mean, all I saw him was the reruns of I Love Lucy, and but he was so interesting that I watched it till the end, and pretty much ever since then, the episodes of Saturday Night Live I watched to the end. I've seen almost every episode, except for the years I was in college. But that was the time when I think John Belushi and everyone else had left the show.
Yeah, there's this one episode that I watched.
Yeah.
You know the DVD set called The Best of Soul Train?
Oh yeah,
It's called The Worst of Soul Train.
the worst of Soldier
And the guy.
on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah,
It was a
it's
skit.
really funny.
Oh yeah,
You should see it.
I used to watch Soul Train, and
I did too.
all those ads for Afro Sheen and
Afro
Ultra Sheen.
Sheen,
all this stuff I've never heard of before.
Classic Curls.
They always took a name, a popular singer, and they mixed up their letters and they put it together and do it
The Scrabble
a
board.
Scrabble board, and they always got it right. I could never get it right. Half those people I've never heard of, at least when I was a teenager. And I remember never seeing a white person on the show, but that kind of made it cool. But then one day, I think Elton John, who rarely appeared on TV in those days, appeared on the show. Everything was lip sync
Yeah.
like American Bandstand.
Yeah, I was
And I
told about
remember,
that.
yeah, and
I was told about that.
and what was wild was there was a scene once with the Jackson Five were on there, and the microphone falls off the stand, and while they're still singing, they're picking it up and putting it back, and they're all laughing because they know it's all fake. Germaine or whoever it was who did it, and what else do I remember from Soul Train? So, the Soul Train line,
Oh,
yeah,
I like that's my favorite part.
they have the Soul Train line in Beetlejuice,
Yeah.
in the new.
Yeah.
I remember that show. It was so cool. I always wanted to be on that show.
I did too.
I always wanted to be one of the dancers on the show.
I did too. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
If not that show, then American Bandstand. I wanted to be on all the shows. Actually,
I remember when I was a kid, when I was used to watch American Bandstand.
yeah.
Every time I see the dancers, I used to stand up and then I put my head upside down, like acting like they were dancing.
Yeah.
That was pretty funny.
I would love. I don't know how I always wanted. There was a show when I was a kid. I told people this all the time. There was a show that had kids on it. It's called Art Link Letter. Kids say the damnedest things.
Yeah.
And I was one of those kids who said the damnedest things. I come from a small town in Virginia, Hopewell, Virginia, and another friend of mine comes from Lynchburg, Virginia. And when we grew up and started telling, I always wanted to be on that Art Link Letter. So yeah, I always wanted to be on that Art Link Letter show too. He goes, where'd they get those kids? Where'd they get those lame-o kids? I, 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 I mean, we would have been like Noel Coward and Oscar Wilde. We would have wiped the floor with those punk ass kids. But they weren't sending. The show was from I think Beverly Hills. That show,
Yeah.
and they weren't sending limousines to Hopewell and Lynchburg, Virginia, to pick these raw talents up. I don't know how they got on their show. I don't even know how they picked these kids. There was one kid. This was back in the like late '60s. I remember watching it. The kids were kind of interesting, though. Were they? Because you don't really in those days you didn't really see kids act like kids. They were always actors, like on the Brady Bunch or something, or in Disney movies. But here were kids acting like kids and giving responses and everything to questions that Art Linkletter would give. And one I remember, he asked one kid, "What would you do if you were elected governor of California?" And the kid says, "Well, the first thing I would do is throw out all the hippies." And everyone, like, he almost got a standing ovation from all the old fogies in the audience. And I said, I was told my mom, I said, that's kind of a harsh, it's a harsh thing for not only a kid to say, but for people to applaud a kid saying.
Yeah.
Everyone, I mean, people now you think of the '60s, the hippies were the people, but in
Yeah.
those days, the hippies were hated with their drugs and their dungarees and their tie-dye shirts. Sometimes I run into old people, and I say, I bet you they used to be hippies in the day because they look like they used to be hippies. They still have the love beads and
Oh yeah.
the long hair and everything. One thing I always thought was weird how during the Vietnam War they used to hate the hippies for protesting against the war and everything. But the craziest thing is once those guys came back to the VA hospitals and everything, they all grew their hair long and beards. They looked like hippies. You couldn't distinguish them from the hippies at that point. But they were still great patriotic
Yeah.
soldiers. Yeah. So that was the Art Linkletter show. So I always wanted to be on that. I wanted to be on Captain Kangaroo. I wanted to be on Romper Room. I wanted to be on every kids show.
Yeah.
I thought I'd have this career. Like I think the big kid star in those days was Kevin Corcoran, same name as me, and I thought I'd have this career. He's in all the Disney movies. Ronnie Howard.
Yeah.
Well, I made a movie with once.
I always wanted to be on Mr. Rogers or Sesame Street.
Mr. Rock. Yeah, Sesame Street. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. People joke I dress like a pimp on Sesame Street, but Sesame Street on PBS,
Yeah.
which brings us to PBS now. Sesame Street. I used to watch it, and I was a little too old for by the time that came on. But my sisters loved it. My younger sisters loved it, and I liked it too. I like the Muppets and everything. I like Bert and Ernie. I liked actually that's all I liked was Bert and Ernie. Yeah,
I love Bert and Ernie.
yeah. I didn't think much of Big Bird.
I love Big Bird.
You love Big Bird?
Yeah.
I always found Big Bird kind of childish. I once asked one of my sisters, "Do you like Barney the dinosaur?" And she says, "No, I find the show very childish." I said, "It's a show for children. Of course, it's childish." They used to have these fake commercials on Sesame Street, and today's broadcast is brought to you by the letter B and the number 9 or something like that. And they would interrupt the show throughout the show to talk about those things, those letters. And I asked my sister, "Do you like Sesame Street?" "Yeah, I like Sesame Street for one thing." I said, "What's that?" Because too many commercials. "Yeah, I'm watching PBS. There should be no commercials on PBS." And now they put commercials on Sesame Street for the letter Q and the number 15. And, and the songs were good on Sesame Street. I learned a lot about like rock and roll show songs.
Yeah.
They used to play stuff like I remember the Muppets would sing songs like Spinning Wheel, and I mean they
Yeah.
do little and a lot of
I love trash.
I love trash.
If they did you're dusty and dirty.
Ragged and rusted and quirky.
Yeah.
I love it because it's trash.
And C is for cookie. It's good enough for me.
Yes. Well, I remember um, those songs were all written by Joe Raposo, and he wrote all the songs on Sesame Street. The theme song, he wrote. He wrote "I Love Trash." He wrote "Rubber Ducky." He wrote "It's Not Easy Being Green," and and then he died suddenly. He wrote one of the last things he did was he did a whole album, concept album for Frank Sinatra. "Oh, Blue Eyes Is Back." None of the songs are as good as "Sing a Song." All the songs he wrote for Sesame Street. Joe Raposo, and he wrote good stuff. I remember watching Johnny Carson, and somebody wanted to stump the band, and the song was "I Love Trash." And I said, I know that song. Well, finally, I knew a song that someone was trying to stump the band with, and the band did not know it. Yeah. So, uh, um, Rubber Duck. There was all these. I had the album of
Rubber
all.
ducky, you're the one. You make us have lots of fun. Rubber ducky is
I'm awfully fond of you. Let me tell you. Well, I'm not. There's another show I appear on, but we had our own lyrics to Rubber Duck. That being in a bathtub and wasn't one of the pretty lyrics. I can't remember them, but I'll probably remember by the time I see the other show I'm on. Anyway, what else? Mr. Hooper. Remember Mr. Hooper?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Mr. They used to have this. Oh, I tell you who I really liked. There was someone I did like on Sesame Street. That was Oscar the Grouch.
Oh yeah, it was.
Where did they come up with this guy? Like a mutant dwarf or something. He lived in a garbage can. The you know I mean, there's actually I think I told you this before. There's a play that came out before Sesame Street. It was in the mid '60s called um, Endgame. It's not the Avengers Endgame. It's by Samuel Beckett, and it's about a post-apocalyptic four characters. I don't know how these people are related to each other. One guy is on a dentist chair and he can't move. Another guy cannot sit down because he's catering to the other three people. The other two people are just torsos with heads sticking out of garbage cans, and they remind me so much of Oscar the Grouch. In retrospect, that I said, is he a Beckett character from
Yeah.
Samuel Beckett? I wrote Waiting for Godot. He also I remember uh, there was also a I had a friend, and my best friend growing up, and we were the same age, and he we I said, your little sisters like watching Sesame Street? Oh yeah, they watch Sesame Street. We're like about 10 years old at the time. Because if you do you ever watch Sesame? Yeah, I watch it when they're watching it. Those days people only had like one TV in the house, and the kid during certain hours, if Sesame Street was on, they corralled the whole. They ran the living room. Hey, I want to watch the ball game. No, we're gonna watch Sesame Street. It's 3 hours of Sesame Street.
Yeah.
But you've seen it already. It's all reruns. Like, I don't care. I'm gonna watch it again.
I remember my mom years ago when I was a kid.
Yeah,
I ever heard her talk on the phone.
yeah,
I think it was one of my relatives or something.
yeah.
She was like, I can't stand Sesame Street. I can't stand Mr. Rogers or something like that.
Oh, I got a whole long speech about Mr. Rogers in a moment. But
That hurt my feelings though, because I like
because
those
you like
shows.
those shows,
Yeah.
I I used to read Classics Illustrated comic books,
Oh, yeah.
and somebody said you should read the real books, not the comic book version of it. I said, Get out of my sight. I don't need you lecturing me on how to how to read fine literature. If I want to read it in a comic book, I'll read. Those days I read comics all the time, even the Classics Illustrated. In fact, there are people who think they know all about me. All my life, this has been the case, and they read the first page, or they know maybe a little bit about me, and then they think they could define my whole life like that. This always happens in my life, and I'm kind of used to it by now. If I'm not used to it, I better get used to it because I'm at least 50 years old now. So anyway, what happened was that I said, you think you know me? I've said this to even friends of mine who assume things about me. I said, you think you know me? You only know the Classics Illustrated version of my life. You only think you know the Cliff Notes version of my life. So anyway, so I said to this kid, he said his sisters like it. I said, is there anything have you learned anything from, I'm sure you know your ABCs and how to count and everything by now. He goes, yeah, I've only learned one thing from Sesame Street. I said, what's that? He goes, I learned how to become a grouch. Oscar's defined it for me. I think I could use his tips. I said, yeah, he's the only interesting person on that show. There was a I remember, like, there was a guy, he played Gordon, and he had a big mustache. It was Susan was his wife, I think.
Yeah.
And he had sideburns and a mustache. He was actually, I think, Holly Robinson's father, but his name wasn't Gordon. And then, like, 3 years later, I hadn't watched it in a while. There was another guy on there, and he was Gordon. I said, wait a minute, that's not Gordon. What happened to the other actor? I didn't know you could. I thought they would at least cast a new actor in a new role, not just. And they really think that we're that stupid? And they said no. New bunch of kids are watching it, and the old kids already know that that's the old Gordon. There's the new Gordon. And then they had a Gordon that was bald headed with a beard.
Yeah.
And my they had something on the news. They showed a guy in jail, and he looked kind of like Gordon. He had a bald head and a beard, and my littlest sister said, "I know that guy. He's on Sesame Street." He was on the news. He was a prisoner at the jailhouse. I said, he's on Sesame Street. I was joking around. I said, he's on Sesame Street. This guy. I said, what's he in jail for? Having having an unnatural act with a giant bird.
I remember a couple on that show named Maria and Lewis.
Yeah.
Lewis and Maria.
Were they like Puerto Ricans or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a lot of Spanish on that show as the years went on.
Actually, my favorite human character.
Yeah. I yeah. There was the Snuffleupagus.
Yeah.
And nobody saw him but Big Bird.
I liked him too.
How do you hide the Snuffleupagus?
There's this episode that I saw on Sesame Street.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was some kind of ostrich or something like that. That was a puppet.
Oh,
and
yeah.
And he had a crush on Maria.
Oh, God.
And then she was actually married to Lewis. And then he'll be like, Maria, 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 Maria.
He's a West Side Story. He's quite a talented ostrich. He could get better than Maria if he could sing that song.
It's pretty funny. I might have to find the video.
I'm
so
sure.
I can send it to you.
I remember, what else do I remember about Sesame? There was one guy, he just died just like 2 years ago. Bob McGrath.
Yeah, I know him.
He used to sing. He used to be when I was a kid. He was on the Mitch Miller Show.
Yeah.
And what was kind of neat about Bob McGrath, he was always on Sesame Street. He was on it for like 40 years. Wow. And not too long before he died, he was on Sesame Street, and he looked exactly the same as when he did in 1968 when it started. I was trying to start a rock and roll band when I was like 8 or 9 years old. I didn't know how to play instruments or anything, but we had an enthusiasm, my friends and I, and there were songs on Sesame Street I thought we could sing, like I Love Trash, do a rock and roll version, or songs like that, Rubber Ducky. And then what happened with motorcycles? And then what happened was we did not want our friends to watch Sesame Street, or they'd know we were stealing the songs from that show. So I told Ma. In fact, I kind of used it as a Sesame Street as an educational show. So I thought, I don't have to go to school anymore. I don't have to go to third grade anymore. I could just stay home because it was on in the morning during
Yeah.
school hours.
Yeah.
And these were for the preschoolers that don't go to school. It was still on.
Yeah.
And I said, I'll watch it with the little kid, my younger sisters. No, 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 you're going to go to school. You're not going to stay home and watch Sesame Street all day. That's not your education.
Oh yeah.
The Muppets.
Yeah.
And I remember once the Muppets appeared on like the Carol Burnett show or one of these shows,
Oh yeah.
and my sisters wanted to stay up to watch it, and he says, can we stay up past 9 o'clock tonight? He goes, I want to watch the Carol Burnett show. The Muppets are on it. He goes, and my mom said, you don't watch you're getting too old for the Muppets on Sesame Street. You're not going to watch them on the Carol Burnett show. Or I think it might have been that Sullivan show. Now that I think about it. And then there was Mr. Rogers.
Yes. My favorite part was the neighborhood make believe
Yeah.
with all the
Let's
puppets and stuff.
let's go to the house of make believe.
And Lady Elaine,
Lady
in the
Elaine.
spinning museum.
Yeah. And then now we're going to take a trip to make believe.
Yeah.
I don't know. If I had a guy like Mr. Rogers in my neighborhood, I said, what type of weirdo are you? But I mean, for one thing, I never understood about Mr. Rogers. Is he like obsessive compulsive, or does he have to take off his shoes and put on a new pair of shoes on? He changes his jacket to a sweater, but he keeps his tie on. I mean, he should just throw it. He should take his shirt off. And then he would, and the music on that show was really weird. It was like a xylophone.
Yeah.
It was a, what do you call it? A celesta. Which is what you hear, like, I think, in the only other time you ever hear that instrument is in the Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy. Ding 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 ding
Yeah.
ding 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 ding. It was a nice instrument,
Yeah.
but they don't use it that much. But Mr. Rogers, that was might as well have been the piano, might have been the electric guitar. That was the only type of music on there. He actually wrote a lot of those songs. And he actually had a few albums singing those songs for kids. And I think in real life, Mr. Rogers was just like that. Whenever he appeared in a, at a book signing or something.
I like,
Oh, hello, little boy. Hello, little girl. You know.
I like this scene. It's very emotional. It was about a boy in a wheelchair.
Yeah. Well, he did a lot of good touching stuff. It was a sincere show, more sincere. I always thought Sesame Street was not sincere. I always thought, they always yelled at each other and called each other stupid. The Muppets hit him in the back of the head, and all. But Mr. Rogers would not allow that,
Yeah.
on his show, and I think my parents liked us watching Mr. Rogers because this is how you should behave. Really.
Yeah.
Yeah. We wanted our shows to have more of an edge.
I like.
Yeah.
That's the boy in a wheelchair song.
Yes. I remember he had the witch from The Wizard of Oz on there,
yes.
Margaret Hamilton.
Oh yes.
And I remember he had tried to tell everyone that she wasn't a witch in real life; she was an actress. And then I remember that he had, he had Yo-Yo Ma. We talked about him last week.
Yeah, I remember.
We had, and uh, you know why you never saw Mr. Rogers in the Land of Make Believe?
Why?
He was never there. You never saw him there.
He was the voice of the puppet.
He was the puppeteer, actually, and the voice of the puppets. So
That's
yeah,
why
he couldn't be in the same place at once.
That's why he wasn't there.
Yeah, he was there, but not in person.
Yeah.
There was no Punch and Judy on there. Remember the tiger?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and everything was so cute on that show.
Yeah, I liked Lady Elaine.
Lady Elaine, Fairchild.
Yeah, she got married.
Yeah.
And she had that spinning museum.
Yeah. King Friday.
Yeah, I liked him too.
Sarah Saturday.
I liked her too. I like.
You like puppets?
Yeah.
Yeah, puppets are cool.
I liked Lady Elaine. Queen Friday, Sarah Saturday,
Yeah.
and Prince Tuesday.
Yeah.
And the owl.
Yeah.
And the pussycat, the one that led to the treehouse.
I've seen a documentary about that show. I think it was made after he died, and he was one of the first people to hire an openly gay a stagehand. And he seemed to have, I mean, I think he was a preacher in real life, and he seemed to have no problem with gay people, which I think is great, because in those days the gay people were like, sadly, like punchlines to jokes and everything. And I think, and he was, I give him credit. You know who else worked for him for a short time? The show was based in Pittsburgh. It was Michael Keaton, Beetlejuice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Michael Keaton got his start on the show. I think he might have even been on stage a few times.
Yeah.
But this is before he was on what show? He had a few TV shows before he was Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
And Batman. What else can I tell you? And Dope Sick.
Oh yeah.
That's my favorite thing he did.
Yeah.
My favorite actors are in that movie, that TV show.
Yeah.
Michael Keaton, you and me.
Yeah. Yeah.
What else? Though I never saw Michael Keaton. What else? But there was a show called Zoom. Did you ever watch Zoom?
Oh yes.
Yeah, Zoom had more of an edge to it, and it was mainly for older
Remember that girl?
kids. And I was probably the age that the target audience, because I think they said that Sesame Street is too childish.
Yeah, remember the girl that went like this?
Oh yeah,
Bernadette.
those
Praise
kids
girl.
were kind of real cool.
I'm Bernadette. Da, da.
I used to love on Zoom. They used to have a Zoom movie, and they do a profile of a kid, and he would be like on diving boards, or a kid that was a skateboarder, and I thought that was so cool.
Oh yeah.
Because I don't know how they got the film. I mean, kids didn't have access to filmmaking. They didn't have video cameras or anything in those days. So they actually probably had to send a film crew to film them, and they said, "Here's a film about a skateboarder in Philadelphia or something." And I thought that was, and then the Zoom. Zoom. Do you remember the zip code on Zoom? We're gonna zoom. They always say
02134.
02134. It became, until Beverly Hills 90210 became the most famous zip code in America, because all the kids knew the Boston. It was based in Boston, that show. I think
they have Boston accents too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I should have been born in a big city. I should have. What am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing in Virginia?
Yeah, I know.
I'm too big for this town.
Me too.
I'm only 5'3", and I'm still too big for this town. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Differently, but the way I learned it. So.
Anyway, I am so happy to be enjoying this Halloween with you, Mary Elizabeth.
Yes.
Thank you for having me on your show.
You're
on this
welcome.
special Halloween. We do a Halloween episode every year. The last few years, I think we've worn costumes, and last year we were the Little Mermaid, and Prince Eric. And I think before that the Avengers, and now we're Wayne's World.
Yes.
Excellent! Party time! No way! Way! Yes way! Happy Halloween from Kaye Lazar, and what's your name again? This is the Mary Elizabeth Variety Hour. Stay tuned for another fantastic episode. Stay tuned to this channel for more of our exciting adventures.